Hello friends, today is part 3 of our Welding Procedure Specification series. Today we will be discussing about AWS D1.1 Structural Welding Pre-Qualified Procedures. How to prepare it. Let us start. What is structural welding? How it is differing from the pressure containing welds that in piping or pipeline? International standard references for structural welding, how to qualify a structural WPS, how to prepare a structural WPS. Before we know the structural welding, let us know about structural engineering, the branch of civil engineering that deals with the large modern buildings and similar structures such as bridges, buildings and dams. The structural welding is part of civil engineering or civil scope for a project. Structural fabrication refers to the cutting, bending, welding and assembling of steel to create different products. We will discuss about the structural welding of carbon steel, which is most relevant to our field. In the projects like pipeline construction, the structural steel fabrication scope includes pipe racks, structural shelters or shades, valve or equipment access platform, structural skids for equipment, full thrust anchor, piping or pipeline typical structural supports, pipe shoes, etc. These are load-bearing members and or supporting the piping or pipelines. The structure should be strong enough to bear the load and vibration, retain its shape of the piping system or pipeline during the whole tenure of its design life. So the welding of joints for structures are equally important like pressure containing welds, like pipe girth welds, which are directly holding the pressure of the service flowing through the line. So we need to follow the structural specific codes and requirements during welding. There are also heavy structures where integrity as well as the primary load bearing is of prime importance, as in cases of heavy structure found in petrochemicals and refineries. You can see some photos I put at the right side to understand the scope of the structural in oil and Gulf field structural fabrication. Apart from the AWS, means American Welding Society, there are British, Japanese, Indian, many types of international standards for structural welding. But AWS codes are most relevant and most popularly used. So we will be only discussing with these. AWS D series are the structural welding codes. AWS D1.1 is structural welding of steel, 1.2 is structural welding of aluminium, 1.3 is for sheet steel, 1.4 for reinforcement steel, 1.5 for bridge welding, 1.6 stainless steel and so on. But we will be here discussing about the structural welding of steel, which is AWS D1.1. I told you at the beginning of the slide, there are a lot of pre-qualified WPS in AWS D1.1. AWS D1.1 allows us to use directly this welding procedure, but we need to put these welding procedures in the prescribed format with applicable essential variables and submit it to the client or company inspection department for their review and approval before we start implementing at site. For all cases, if there is any materials to be welded with structures are not listed in AWS D1.1, procedure qualification test to be organized and new WPS to be prepared and routed for approval from company project inspection. This type of WPS which needs procedure qualification we will be discussing next episode of this series. Here we will be discussing only for the pre-qualified WPS. So section 5.0 of AWS D1.1 is talking about the pre-qualified WPS. The scope of para 5.1 says, this clause contains requirement of pre-qualified WPS. These WPS are exempt from requirements of testing required for the qualification of WPS as per clause 6. All pre-qualified WPS shall be written in order for a WPS to be pre-qualified. Conformance with all of the other applicable requirements of clause 6 shall be required. WPS that do not conform to this requirement of clause 5 may be qualified by tests in conformance with clause 6. Welders and welding operators and tack welders who will be using this pre-qualified WPS are not automatically qualified. They have to be properly and thoroughly qualified in conformance with clause 6, part C or clause 10, part D for tubulars. General WPS requirement. All the requirements of table 5.1 shall be met for pre-qualified WPS. All pre-qualified WPS to be used shall be prepared by manufacturer, fabricator or contractor as written prefabricated WPS. The written WPS may follow any convenient format. See Annexure J for example if you don't have any format with you. Few important informations. Combination of WPS. A combination of qualified and pre-qualified WPS may be used without qualification of the combination, provided the limitation of the essential variable applicable to each process is observed. Base metal. Only base metal listed in 5.3 may be used in pre-qualified WPS. For the qualification of the listed base metals and for base metal not listed in table 5.3, see 6.2.1. Alternative WPS qualification. Unlisted material for auxiliary attachment which fall within the chemical composition range of a steel listed in table 5.3 may be used in a pre-qualified WPS when approved by the engineer. Table 5.1 is reflecting the list of pre-qualified variables which is reference for us to prepare a WPS which does not require to qualify. 5.2 is pre-qualified essential variables. 5.3 is for approved base metals of pre-qualified WPS. Table 5.4 is the filler metals for matching strength. Similarly, we have 5.5, 5.6, 5.7 and 5.8 for different pre-qualified parameters required to combine a pre-qualified WPS. There are several welding design and combination sketches which are used to decide pre-qualified joint design, like CJP is complete joint penetration, PJP for partial joint penetration. We have to select the right figure from here and put it in our WPS. Now let us go through a glance of a few tables which are important. Table 5.1 is the mandatory pre-qualified WPS requirements. You can see the maximum electrode diameter used for different positions, maximum current. For the current and voltage, that means electrical parameters, AWS D1.1 is emphasizing to use the range and operation recommended by the filler metal manufacturer. This table is the continuation of 5.1 where you can see maximum root pass thickness, maximum fill pass thickness, maximum single pass fillet weld size, maximum single pass layer width. Table 5.2 is for the essential variables for pre-qualified WPS. This is a long list starting from 1 and continued up to 31. The allowable tolerances are also provided, the voltage, current, plus minus, how much we can pick from the PQR value or the manufacturer recommended value. Table 5.3 is for the approved base metals for pre-qualified WPS. You see that first metal ASTM A36 is the most popular metal for the carbon steel plates used for structural steel fabrication. A53, A106, these are also very popular. We have to choose which one is required for us. We got the base metals in table 5.3. Table 5.4 is the matching filler metal which is recommended for base metal group 1, 2, 3, 4 as you can see in the table. Table 5.5 we mentioned before, it is for the minimum pre-qualified partial joint penetration groove weld size. 5.6 is for filler metal requirements for exposed bare applications of weathering steel. 5.7 is for pre-qualified WPS shielding gas operations for GMAW electrodes. And table 5.8 is for the preheat and interburst temperature. Now let us make a WPS where the prerequisites are structural welding for common structural components like plate, angle, channels. The type of welding could be groove or fillet weld. The welding procedure construction wants to use is ASME or stick welding. So let us explore and write a pre-qualified WPS for these given conditions. The basic concept of the WPS in the last video, I have discussed the main contents of a WPS, how many blocks are there. So the first block was WPS information. So here this is quite easy because these are the basic information you have with you for your company. WPS number, WPS revision number, PQR number is not required here. So I wrote it AWS pre-qualified, then PQR revision not applicable. Application we ticked in structures. Design code is AWS D1.1. Qualification code also AWS D1.1. AWS D1.1 in this aspect is a complete code which has the design of structure as well as the qualification as well as the interpretation of non-destructive result like RT, MT, PT. All are in one standard. Impact toughness not required. Post-weld heat treatment not required. Welding process is ASME or stick welding, which is of course manual. Now the second block is the base metal. We need to search the material which will be applicable for us. The condition was the basic structural welding with angle, steel, plates and everything. So I tried to search the material from group 1 and group 2. ASTM A36 in group 1 is only up to 20 mm. The same material A36, if you go in group 2, it will be allow you to weld all the thicknesses. So group 1 we find this popular material ASTM A36, A53, A106, A516, API 5L grade B, and from group 2 I have picked ASTM A36 to get all the thickness range. AWS group number I have written in the base metal block is 1 and 2. AWS group number 1 and 2. Material specification, I have write these materials. Base metal thickness 6 mm is maximum. Figure A and figure B and C. We'll discuss about this figure later. The diameter range, since it is a structural welding not pipe, so it is unlimited, and fillet thickness range is not applicable. Now let us discuss about the figure A, figure B and figure C. I mean the criteria given by construction. These three figure will cover all the structural requirements. The first one you can see it is 6 mm maximum, the weld size, and the figure B and C are unlimited, and you can see the joint numbers, joint designation number, which is specifically for AWS D1.1 is BL1B, BU2, BU4B. All these three figures I will mention in my WPS. So base metal is clear for you. Now we will go for the third block, which is filler metal, which is pretty easy over here. To support the base metal group 1 and 2, we can use 70XX, it can be 18, 16 or 10, and group 2 it is specifically written 7016, which our construction like to use. So I use AWS A5.1, class is E7016, size for flexibility I have write all the diameters, which is 2.5 mm, 3.2 mm and 4.0 mm. Maximum deposition thickness per pass shall be in accordance with the table 3.6 AWS D1.1. Now we'll go for the preheat requirement. You see the table number 5.8 we have discussed in the general discussion that it is for pre-qualified minimum preheat and interpass temperatures. So we have collected this data from this table, which you can see as per the thickness 3 mm to 20 mm, minimum preheat temperature is 10 degree, above 20 to 38 is 65 degree, greater than 38 to 65 is 110, greater than 65 mm 150 degree centigrade, and maximum interpass temperature I have taken from the client or company standard, which is 315 degree centigrade. Post-weld heat treatment. It is not required in our case, but I just put the screenshot from part H where we can get the post-weld heat treatment requirement for AWS D1.1 in case it is required. I am not going in detail because in our WPS it is not required. Gases, block 5, not applicable for SMAW. Electrical characteristics are welding parameters coupled together. So I am discussing it together also. Electrical characteristics, you can find it from the table 5.1 from the pre-qualified WPS requirement. For electrical parameters, I told you that AWS D1.1 is always recommending the filler metal manufacturer company specified current and voltage or polarity. So that's what I put in the table here. E7016, you can see the pass, second pass, and then first is the front, second is the back, because the joint designation here supports the welding from the back also, and there is filling capping. You can see the diameter of electrode, you can see the polarity, you can see the voltage, ampere, travel speed, everything. Now the 7th and 8th block is weld technique and joint design. I have taken a very simple welding procedure for better understanding since we are in the initial stage of preparing a WPS. So this figure A, B and C we have discussed before. You can see the same thing we have mentioned. Technique is pincher and web bead, multiple passes, pinning. Pinning means hammering or putting external force on the welding is not allowed in company or client standard. Cleaning is brushing and grinding. Joint design is BL1B, BU2 and BU4B. Joint type butt, weld type groove, backing strip nothing required, backing material nothing required, and back gouging is by grinding before you weld the back side. Okay, now we will go for the position. All positions are allowed here, fillet all allowed here. Welding position is uphill, vertical up. So pre-qualified WPS requirement, you can see the table 5.1. The last but not the least, it is most important, is the technical approval for the pre-qualified WPS. Since WPS already pre-qualified in AWS D1.1 and it is not pressure containing weld, it is not required to send to consulting service department or CSD of the client. So only company project inspection can review and approve it for use for any specific project. So it will be prepared by contractor, signature required and stamp required if it is there, and the final approval will be from the company project inspection for specific project approval. Okay guys, hope you understand the way how to prepare the pre-qualified WPS. This is the easiest one, so I have discussed it first. In the next video, I will discuss the structural welding procedure for the unlisted material AWS D1.1, where we need to run a procedure qualification test. So enough for today. If you like the way I am teaching, please share and subscribe my video and like my video to inspire me more. Thank you. Shining off, Somin.